Hello everyone, welcome to the video. John Bodine here with Redemptive Psych, and in this video we're discussing the vector of initiating versus responding, also known as extraversion, or introversion. Now, Linda Berens, who wrote the book on the interaction styles, isolated this vector initiating to be equivalent to being an extrovert and responding as being equivalent to an introvert. So all 8 of the extroverted types are technically initiating, and all 8 of the introverted types are responding. Now, if you know more about the interaction styles, or if you are visiting this video after we've discussed them, you'll recognize that the blue extroverts are also the in-charge types. The red extroverts are the get things going types, or the starter types. For the introverts, the orange introverts are the chart the course types, and the purple ones are the behind the scenes types. Now, the initiating vector, if someone is initiating, they like to create the interaction. They break the ice first. They're more likely to go to the person. They seek out people, they ask them questions, they create the interaction. They also may introduce new topics. This is even more likely for the 4 red extroverts here. But they will create new topics, they will create new points of conversation. When someone asks them a question, when someone asks an extrovert a question, they are more likely to switch topics throughout their answer too and initiate new points. Likewise, their overall energy is an externalized energy, particularly while interacting with other people. They are more taking part in the group dynamic. Now, it doesn't have to be a social or a party thing. This is a misunderstanding of what exactly an extrovert is. Not all extroverts like to go to parties. Not all extroverts like to be around a bunch of people. Extroverts in general, though, they create more of the interactions. They are the ones to initiate, not necessarily to be the life of the party. That is a bit of a misnomer on you have to like parties to be an extrovert. For the responding types, for all the introverts, they prefer to respond. They are less comfortable breaking the ice with the initial contact of an interaction. Now, if they're super comfortable with someone, a family, a girlfriend, boyfriend, someone that they have trust with and some rapport, they are obviously more comfortable than usual with that. But in general, all the introverts prefer to respond. They like to wait for others to come to them. They are most comfortable when others come to them first, give them space to respond, create the interaction, and then the introvert gets to pick how to respond, what to respond to, etc., etc. They're also more likely to stay on topic while responding, particularly when someone else initiates towards them. And then their overall energy is internal. So when someone comes to them, first of all, to initiate an interaction, the introvert gets to share what their internal workings are, and that helps warm them up to the interaction. Okay, there are several things to watch out for with this vector. Like I said, it's simple, but it's layered. The first thing are NI users who are introverts. There's 4 of them, but especially the ISTP and the INFJ. These 2 introverts are very externally focused when they're around other people. Introverted intuition has a natural curiosity about the people around them, particularly the ISTP and INFJ. I've met some ISTPs who just like go and talk to people. Now, it might be a certain context with a team or a workplace interaction, but still, these 2 types are people focused to some degree, particularly when they're around people. So be careful about introverted intuition, introvert users that are somewhat oriented more to their environment than some of the other introverts. Likewise, introverted sensing using extroverts, SI using extroverts, particularly the ESTJ and the ENTP. Of all the extroverts, I've seen these 2 types identify most with introversion, partly because of this. Even though they are initiating, even though they are technically extroverts, the ESTJ and the ENTP especially are very aware of their experience. They have an internal visceral awareness of their experience. So even though they like to initiate interactions, when their energy is all used up, they're aware of that. So it makes them feel like introverts at times, because when they're ready to be done with something, they know that they're ready to be done with something. So because of that natural sensitivity and awareness of their experience, they may seem more like a introvert. So be very careful about that. I've met a lot of ESTJs especially who don't really identify with being what most people think an extrovert is, even though they technically are one. Okay, sharing does not equal extraversion. This is an example with like INTPs especially, and INFPs to a lesser degree. But INTPs have a lot of thoughts to share. When they're somewhat comfortable, they might just talk for like a long time and share their thoughts and keep talking and keep talking. They're not necessarily inviting you into the interaction, they might just be talking. Now, people associate introversion with being withholding about communication. That is somewhat true as an overall pattern. However, some introverts, particularly when they get comfortable, they'll just talk and they'll share and they'll talk some more. That does not necessarily mean that they are an extrovert. Next, what is an extrovert? This is a general question. I'm not going to answer it specifically here, but we need to interact with this question more, because our understanding as our culture of what an extrovert introvert is not very deep. It's not very layered. It's not nuanced. And this is one major reason people mistype, because we have a very elementary understanding of extraversion and introversion. So if you want to consider what you think an extrovert and introvert is, that's a good exercise to develop your ability to use this vector effectively. Next, context, workplace, friends. Do they know those people? Are they comfortable? Introverted sensing extroverts, introverted sensing is very aware of, am I comfortable? Am I uncomfortable? If an ESTJ or an ENTP is around new people, for example, they might not be so comfortable with initiating as much. Okay, and if someone's in a work environment, like I've seen INTJs in work environments that are they're very go-getter, they're very in charge, they're much more sociable than people think an INTJ is capable of. So we have to be aware of these contexts. What context am I seeing this person in? Is this their natural habitat? How do I know? How do I not know? So being aware of that is really important. If you're trying to type a teacher or a professor and they talk for a living, that makes it more complicated, right? So we have to involve the context when we're typing a person, especially if it's someone we don't know, like a celebrity. We're watching an interview and trying to type them. That is extremely important there as well. And then lastly, for the watch out, gender influence. Okay, this is the first of two vectors at least where gender influence starts to play an important role. Now, this is somewhat an open-ended question. If you're a woman and you're in America, do you think women are taught more to be initiating or more responding when it comes to interactions? The gender influence mixed with the context gives two important filters to filter out someone's learned behavior versus what they naturally and how they naturally interact. And then lastly, how do we practice? We first practice by being aware, by learning to be aware of some of these pitfalls where we can get stuck on what we expect an introvert or an extrovert to look like. But like the other vectors, start with the extremes. Do you know someone who does not like to go out ever, who is very, very sensitive to social experiences, to being drained very quickly? That is probably a signal of introversion. However, you have to watch when they interact. Do they prefer to respond? Do they reflect? Do they think a lot before they talk? That is a more extreme introvert behavior. Likewise, with the other extreme, do you know someone who just talks and shares and initiates and starts all these interactions just as a way of life? Maybe they don't think a lot before they talk. Maybe they just talk, right? That is more associated with an extreme extrovert interaction style. Now, we have to also understand within the extremes what someone's preference is, where they're comfortable. This is associated with context. If you can find them in a natural habitat for them, you can begin to see, okay, what's actually going on under there. What is their natural tendency? Because all these vectors are really just tendencies. What is their natural way of being? Now, related to the extremes here, I found that extroverted sensing users who are extroverts tend to be more extroverted, more outgoing, more gregarious at times. This is the ESTP, both the ENJs and the ESFP. These are some of the types that are more about the visceral experience, more engaging perhaps more aggressively with the environment. Now, I've also found that the ESTP is a little bit on the border here. A lot of ESTPs I've met kind of identify more as needing some more alone time. So in my opinion, the 4 most extroverted types on average would be the ESFP, the ENFJ, the ENTJ, and then the ENFP. Those are, in my opinion, the 4 types most likely to exhibit more stereotypical extroverted traits. Likewise, for the introverts, introverted sensing introverts. Introverted sensing is aware of my experience, okay, my comfort level. Do I feel safe? Do I feel unsafe? That combined with an introverted type, that is going to have a higher chance of that person looking more like a stereotypical introvert. So that's the ISTJ, the ISFJ, the INTP, and the INFP. So using that mixed with typing the extremes, that can help you start to fill in those colors, start to understand what at least are the extremes of this vector. And then lastly, again with the context, culture, nurture, and gender. We talked about gender, nurture closely related to that, and then culture as well. Culture is this programming layer that is built into each of us, and it affects all of how we communicate. It affects a lot how our natural tendencies are going to come out. You can think about certain cultures that, hey, what are some cultures who are less likely to initiate? What are some cultures who are way more gregarious and outspoken and even direct, right? So taking that into your filtration closet will help you develop some awareness and develop some of the nuanced skills to begin your process of mastering being able to tell what anyone is, regardless of how complex or simple their interaction is. All right, guys, that's the video, initiating versus responding. Thanks for stopping by. We're going to continue to dig through some of these vectors to equip you with the tools you need to type anyone. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.